Good morning, everybody. Welcome to IGTV. This is William H. Murray with the InfraGard Editorial. Bill, take it away.
Good morning.
Good morning.
One mark, not to say burden, of a profession is that it must make difficult ethical choices. Not so much between good and evil as between the greater of goods and the lesser of evils. We call these choices dilemmas, in part because there are no easy rules or guidance for resolving them. Information security may not be confronted with more difficult choices than other professions, but we certainly have our share. I'd like to discuss some of them with you this morning. We owe ethical duties to the profession, that is, to one another. Duties that must yield that to those duties due our principals, that is, our employers and our clients. And these, of course, are subordinate to our duties to society. For example, I owe my principals competent service. In my case, that means I do not accept forensic engagements. While I clearly know more about computer forensics than the average bear, I don't have sufficient experience in conducting investigations to be able to represent myself as competent in that space. So if the engagement involves forensics, I have to either get additional colleagues to work with me, or I have to refer the client to somebody else. My duties to society include, for example, protecting it from weak systems, which brings me to one of the ethical tests that I like to use. Nice people don't do that. Nice people do not connect weak systems to the internet. To do that is to weaken the infrastructure and to put all of your neighbors at risk. Even these simple priorities, that is, between the profession, the client, and the society, produce dilemmas. Just writing them down was controversial. Many professionals feared that we were setting traps for the unwary. For example, one professional wanted to know where his investors ranked in this hierarchy. I suggested to him that he should have thought about that before he accepted outside investment. That other professionals, like lawyers and accountants, resolved this dilemma by forbidding investment from those who are not members of the profession. Said another way, professionals do not have professional associations with non-professionals. A lawyer cannot be a partner of a non-lawyer. Long before there were other professional associations in our field, my colleague Don Parker and I agreed after consultation that we would withdraw from a panel when informed by the organizers that they had invited a rogue hacker to be a member of the panel. Now, it turned out not to be a problem. The hacker not only failed to appear, but he went underground and has never been heard from again. Actually, other than the fact that he advocated his right to convert to his own use property that other people had paid for, he was a very bright and personable young man. I like to think that he went on to have a successful career in, say, academia, religion, the law, or medicine, any other profession but mine. I just don't want him practicing on my turf. Is it more important for security professionals to gather intelligence from the rogues or to shun them so as to resist their claims that they are really our peers? They're just like us. Different color hat. This may be the oldest ethical question in the field. While there is no easy answer, there are certainly strongly held positions on both sides. The issue of the rogues identifying themselves with us and as us is a very common defense for their actions. There's a young man right now doing time in California for breaking into a system at the University of Southern California and then turning over personally identifiable data from that system to a reporter. His defense was that he was a computer security consultant, just doing what such consultants do. Of course, this defense failed, in part because he had no credentials as a consultant. He had no consulting experience. but mostly because he had no agreement with the school and did not respect their rights in his work product. I was reminded of this case last week when, after advising a colleague on questions from his client on user authentication, the issue suddenly slipped over into one of making a recommendation for that client. First, between us, we did not know enough about his client's application or threat environment to make such a recommendation. As a physician cannot prescribe for a patient he has not seen, there is a minimum that we must know before we can ethically make a recommendation. Second, neither of us had been engaged by his client to advise on that particular question. While he might have been covered under a retainer, I was not going to collect a fee. This is an example of situations in where the client, in all innocence, may ask us to do things that put us in compromising positions. I have a short set of rules that I use to help me avoid the inherent traps in those requests. First, I do not work without a contract or a letter of engagement, one that expresses what the client's expectations are and how I intend to meet those expectations. Second, I do not work for free. It would be unfair to my colleagues for me to do so. Moreover, the fee seals the contract. It demonstrates that whatever I do with the client's knowledge, consent, and intent. This rule does not prevent pro bono work, but it does prevent the use of pro bono as an escape from the obligation to charge those who should be expected to pay. And even pro bono work requires a contract, perhaps one that quotes the normal fees that would be associated with such an engagement and then waives them. Third, I do not work on a client's system by myself. I prefer the client's supervision, but may settle for a colleague, but never by myself. If I were to work on the client's system by myself and subsequently the system proved to be compromised, some of the suspicion for that compromise might fall on me. Moreover, the presence of others serves as a check against any ethical excess or breach on my part. Fourth, I do not disclose the client's data, not even to the authorities, but certainly not to the press, without the client's permission. If my client goes to jail for protecting his data or resisting giving it to the authorities, I'm prepared to go with him. Notice that the use of these 4 rules might have kept our colleague in California out of prison. However, I have 2 more that might be useful to you. The 5th rule is, I do not lie to the client's personnel, even when the client specifically requests it. I do not lie to the client's personnel, even for money. This specifically includes demonstrations that the client is vulnerable to social engineering. All clients are vulnerable to social engineering. Social engineering exploits the fundamental human condition, the fact that people like to be helpful and like to trust other people. There are others who are prepared to take that client's money to lie to his people, but that's their responsibility, not mine. Finally, I do not engage in any activity such that if I were caught in the act, it would embarrass the client, my colleagues, or myself. This specifically includes covert penetration testing. You've all seen the movie Sneakers. That's supposed to have been based upon the consulting practice of my colleague, Bob Abbott. Bob assured me that he never would have engaged in covert penetration like the movie starts with. I was able to sell this idea even to a large consulting practice that really wanted to do covert penetration testing by recounting the story of the large firm that was so successful in attacking the client's identified file servers on the client's network that it went on to attack servers that were not part of the engagement. In the process, they triggered alarms that resulted in the police and the FBI being summoned. We call that embarrassing. Now, these rules are personal. While they identify and address ethical issues that confront every security professional, adherence to them does not guarantee ethical behavior, and variances from them may be addressed by any number of other ethical alternatives. Still, I offer them to you with the hope that you will find them useful. These rules can be summed up under the rubrics of informed consent, transparency, and accountability. The more people who understand what it is that you are about to do, the less likely you are to be engaged in some kind of an ethical breach. Now, we might wish to have fewer and easier issues to deal with. However, it is because we must deal with such issues that we are called professionals and are paid the big bucks. See you next week.
Thanks, Bill. Certainly appreciate it.